So this is the third game by Jake Clover called Splosive Tomatafrow, which is actually, in my opinion, a little bit of a unique title actually. Definitely making use of the English language. Excellent use, if I may say so, as an English language user. And this game, if one would even call it that, was made in the 10th of August, 2011. And there's a timestamp, but no one cares about the timestamp. The description says this is a game made in about 6 hours with music by apxn. It's also on the screen there, on the title screen, on Newgrounds. This game is about a unicorn who throws tomatoes at law enforcement units because it's fun, and it's his way of making time pass. So Safeway opens, and so then he is able to purchase his bread and cigarettes. Safeway opens at 2000 o'clock. Is that right? 2000? I think if I were to translate to military time, I mean, that just sounds like 8 p.m. Sure, 2000. Doing boring things makes time go backwards. When time reaches 0 or you hit a law enforcement unit, try again. I thought, but they throw them purposefully at law enforcement? Okay. Whatever you say, unicorn. And it says here, arrows plus Z. And good thing I'm using a keyboard for this one. Yeah, so I think I just failed there. This is every time I just gotta say, every time it's loud. All these games are just a little bit too loud, in my opinion. And I actually have to turn down my the thing that amplifies my headphones. Is that law enforcement? I think that's law enforcement. So I think the immediate thing to note. This sounds like the chiptune music you would hear on a Keegan. What kind of Keegan? I don't know. I'm just like the whole meme, right? The whole like Keegans sound like this. Okay, so I clearly have to wait for these two. How do I get over this? You're not supposed to get over it. I think I understand now. And you have infinite tomatoes. I'm just mashing Z. There is no limit. You're not supposed to hit law enforcement, of course, and it really does make the time go down. So now this guy, I don't know. I'm going to wait for the tank. I thought I had the jump, but I'm not much of a platformer gamer. I've played Celeste once upon a time. I play a little bit of Mario, and going beyond, the whole platforming thing. Obviously is the unique perspective. I think this is actually harder than it looks. But anyway, this whole unique perspective that you got going on, it's a little hard to tell. It's tilted. There's a meme there. I'm being tilted. Oh, they come from behind you. Oh, and you can go off the rails. So on top of that, these tomatoes, they explode. We're like a unicorn, right? Can't really see the part that makes the main character unicorn. Mostly because there's a tomato blocking it. And it's nice to think that all these tomatoes maybe are conjured by the sort of magic that unicorns have. Or that these tomatoes are stuck to the horn of the unicorn. That's new. That wasn't there before. Okay, so you can blow up. I think now I understand. I thought I wasn't supposed to hit law enforcement. Oh, I think when the description said hit law enforcement, they meant like physically, not with the tomato. It just makes so much sense now. It makes sense. I think logically, right? Like this is the sort of thing that some people back, like Euphrates over in Athens, was thinking about this stuff. And I couldn't even quote Euphrates, but I could make one up right now. Euphrates probably mentioned how unfair the imperial officers were around that time in Athens, specifically because philosophers don't come from any other part of the world. Rousseau, that guy was from Athens. The other philosopher you probably heard of, that guy comes from Athens. The Albert Camus? Yeah, it came from Athens. And how's Athens right now? Exactly. Go beyond the obvious a little bit. I think I actually have to keep throwing tomatoes at this this tank. And good thing it looks like a tank, because otherwise I never would have known that this was a tank. And yeah, it actually blew up. It makes you wonder why we supply all these weapons to armies when you could just throw a tomato with a ton of gunpowder on top of it, or in it, or organically grown gunpowder. Maybe that's just saltpeter. I don't know what saltpeter is. Now I'm actually at 500 o'clock. I guess the o'clock thing, now that I think about it, is really just a different way of describing score. It's just a score. And oh, what up? Like, I'm gonna kite him. Yeah, let's see. They call that orb walking for old school gamers. Might have heard of it. Oh, this is the watermelon. It's like Plants vs Zombies. And now that was pretty close. Yeah, it looks like I'm not on the roof, but I'm still on your roof. Because, Plants vs. Zombies. That's not a spoiler, by the way. I hope not. I hope everyone who's actually watched this has played Plants Zombie game. And I guess, you just stand here? It feels like that's kind of not what I'm supposed to do, but it feels like that's the strategy that is being, like, subtly provided, or, like, handed to me. And not provided, but I feel like, they're giving me the papers, not the keys. Because the keys belong to the law enforcement officers who are currently driving, but rather the papers. They're giving me the papers in the way, like the deed, the deed to the place, right? You go into the restaurant and you're not served food. You're served the deed to the entire restaurant, of course. And they say, oh, they get mad at you. They get mad at you trying to criticize the waiters, the waitresses, the cooks, the chefs, which I think are the same thing now that I think about it, right? Cooks and chefs. They're trying to hand that responsibility to you. It's like in a game of Dota or in League of Legends, whatever you prefer. And one game's better than the other, and I won't say which. It's like in one of those games, you're the support and you're criticizing the carry, and the carry says to you, okay, why don't you carry then? And sometimes maybe you actually successfully do that. You're playing Rubik, you're playing, I can't think of it. What's a carry? The Thresh. You're playing Thresh, and you actually do carry. Yeah, maybe you don't have it. Oh, Blitzcrank, another one. Those are still support gamers, right? It's because it's been. You might be able to tell it's been too long since I played those games, and I think it's just the magic of whimsy, which I actually cannot even define those words. What I just spoke myself, that has led me to talk about MOBAs while playing what is kind of like a side scroller, like a Metroidvania, but without the parts that make it a Metroidvania. Like the whole exploration. This just has absolutely, like, there's the item, sure, like the same item that you get the ice beam when you're playing Metroid, and then you freeze the dude. When I say the dude, I mean there's like the space pirates, right? And you have to freeze them eventually to actually destroy them, or maybe it was like the monsters that poke their heads out of the wall. And again, I hope that this doesn't sound like a spoiler for Super Metroid, because you probably should have played that game by now for multiple reasons, right? The obvious thing is that Super Metroid is just an incredibly influential game, and one may argue, which I think is like actually fair argument, that I'm just gonna say right now, even if it sounds like I have no knowledge on the subject. One may argue that Super Metroid is so influential that it might have influenced this game. Like, what is a tomato but a missile? What is a tomato but a missile? And of course, Plants vs. Zombies influenced the vegetable part of this. This is, I'm not sure if the watermelon actually is an upgrade. I kind of don't think it is. So now I'm just inching forward. And whenever I see a car, I'm just kind of piecing out. I'm in the middle of the stage, right? And I think the point is to get to the next part of the stage so that you probably get the upgrade to the watermelon. This entire time I was like mashing Z, but now I realize I could have been holding it down. I realized how I did not respect the game's mechanics enough to not hold down the letter Z on my keyboard. Now that I think about it, Z is a pretty common control to use. Like in Undertale, just the most obvious example that comes to mind. I can't think of any other Game Maker games I've really played so thoroughly besides Undertale, but it makes sense now that I think about it. Undertale, this game, yeah, those are other Game Maker games well, I played the other two like Jake Clover games, and expanding upon that, I think, yeah, something I neglected to mention is perhaps just the visuals. So we're just like, this is an urban environment. That's the sun spinning rapidly, and I think that's unnatural for the sun to do that. I'm trying to get this car, and it just does not work. The car is too fast. I guess I have to rush forward. Yeah, it's the only option I have. Hopefully this tank goes down. Just when it went down. So I'm gonna outright say it. I think this game is actually pretty difficult. It's not easily accessible. At least like you know, I could just like, it's kind of just like hold the button down and walk forward at a certain point and stand there too sometimes. This game probably ironically becomes more difficult with the watermelon, and I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the case. I feel it feels like to me that the point of the watermelon was to provide this major damage buff, as I mentioned, the ice beam or like the super missile to the player, but instead it just feels like a different play style. Feels like we turn from we were a machine gun, but you become a mortar using the watermelon. So this time I'm going to avoid the watermelon, right? Maybe you could say I've learned my lesson, or maybe it's a skill issue. Maybe this is the one of the few games that truly gets to test my skill. I have been inappropriately relying on watermelons this entire time, and perhaps tomatoes were my one true love. And it's taking a while. I'm going below 1,000 because there's just no enemies. And maybe watermelons summon more enemies? Or maybe they were just all behind me? Oh yeah, here we go. Now we're 12. It's noon. Oh, now it's 1. Wow, they were just all behind me. I misunderstood. So, you know, something to note, since I'm just like mowing down what apparently is law enforcement. Ooh, now that I think about it, they have tanks. These are law enforcement dudes with tanks and helicopters who drop cacti men, like the cactus dude from Final Fantasy. Oh, I'm close. Oh, ooh, they came out of nowhere. Well, at least now I know. Like, I'll just use like the tomato weapon. Just way more success there, and now I know I need to return. So, I think what I was kind of talking about is the mechanic here, which promotes aggression. Obviously, is apparently one. It's been a while since I read anything about the game I'm going to mention. Apparently, one that can be found in Guilty Gear. I think Guilty Gear has the sort of a, I don't know how it is in Strive. I remember this is from XRD. Rev. I don't even remember the title, because these fighting games just have complex titles naturally. So this so Guilty Gear has a mechanic where if you walk forward, you build something like tension, and tension is the way you basically build meter, and you know, like to do a super move. And it's kind of the same thing here. It's not that you're building a super move, but that you're effectively trying to reach the win condition. Of course, the win condition being to pass time, like a TF2 game mode that no one cares about. So I think maybe kind of ironically, just not enough enemies on the map right now. My score is going down pretty fast. Yeah, I don't know if I really completed my point about aggression in games. Oh my god, these cars. This is why I advocate for bikes. Because imagine if the police are on bikes, can they catch you? They'll just use motorbikes, so that question is pretty much moot. And anyway, these I never quite finished also about discussing the visuals. You're basically in an urban environment in what appears to be a floating plot of like a block that's just tilted with a few hills in the background. I don't know how many urban environments really have hills like that in the background. I can't really name many. Well, I mean, who can name any, right? Probably seen them in cartoons, but I doubt anyone has seen them in real life. Maybe that's like kind of a California West Coast thing, because I'm just thinking like BoJack Horseman, right? And like the whole Hollywood sign, because I think BoJack Horseman has a, yeah, this game has some things going on in it. I'm just thinking of like BoJack Horseman for just some reason. I don't know why, it's just coming to mind. And it's at this point I really don't have anything else to say, because I think like I've just like addressed everything. I think the real difficulty of this game comes down in just I think the dudes in the cars, yeah, they're pretty buff. I think this game actually, it's like I understand why the game's tilted now because the developer doesn't want you to easily see the people behind you because you have to deliberately turn around, right? I mean, it is true. Like this could be done in a more level plane, like a 180-degree line. See, these tanks are basically distractions for the cars that come behind you. That's sort of analysis like no one has ever made about this game, by the way. I'm probably the first to like really make that strategy up. Anyway, it feels like this game is, I guess it's just unexpectedly difficult, but not really, right? Because for the most part, maybe it's more like it's trying to have these gotcha moments, not like the game, you know, with loot boxes, but more so that it's trying to say, haha, you thought you were in control, you know, you thought the game was so easy, but I'm gonna put in this surprise, right? It feels like I have to constantly turn around to see if there's anything behind me. Maybe this is like, this doesn't entirely work if I'm just walking forward and outpacing anything behind me. But in cases like that, it seems like you do have to turn around. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person who's ever analyzed this game this thoroughly. Okay, I have to return to Safeway because that's when it opens. And I would say Public Enemy number 1. Very much unlike what well, actually, Public Enemy, right? The hip hop group would probably say that they are Public Enemy, but in the sense of like societal norms, right? But here, the Public Enemy is the police car, and perhaps Public Enemy would agree with me. You know, just looking at the messages that they tend to impart onto the viewer. Now I'm close to 2,000. This is supposed to be endgame. If everything goes right, I know the score is going down, but it should go up. There should be some dudes still heading my way here. I got the car. People still spawning there. 19. Oh, there's a car. Oh. What? I didn't even get to see the... I'm not playing this again, by the way. So I guess it's time for the part where I review it. Let's start with the main page. So I read the description, of course, and there's only one comment, very different than last time, which is interesting because the amount of views and likes are the same, right? Last game before this, it was the kitty game, Rainbow Kitty game. This only that had 1.6k views. This only has 1.4k, and basically around the same number of likes. This has like a few less likes. This game is pretty mindless, but it's ridiculously fun. The music adds a lot to it, and when you get the watermelon, it turns absolutely amazing. I also love the ridiculous concept. Totally recommended. They liked their own comment. Or I guess she, because it's Jelly Gal 9 years ago. And I agree, it's a mindless game. Is it fun? I'll say it has potential. It's not quite there yet. But it's just I think it's just too easy to lose in the game. The music adds a lot to it, but when you get to the water, the thing about the music is that it's only like one looping chiptune sound, or not even a soundtrack. Well, like a single soundtrack, right? Because technically it is a track of sound, but it only really lasts. It's probably like 3 minutes, 3-minute loop. It turns absolutely amazing. I also love the ridiculous concept, which is true. It is a ridiculous concept. It is a more interesting presentation for what is a fairly standard like game mechanic, right? Like it could have just been shoot enemies until you reach 2,000 score and then finish the game. I would not recommend this game though. Just gonna be honest. So game design, mechanics, the shooting is just holding down the letter Z, depending on what you think, right? This is going to be a little bit of a hot take. This is, I think we should stop doing this in games because Cuphead does this, and I don't think it's good. I don't think that Cuphead forces you to hold down the letter, or not the letter, well, the letter you pick, obviously, to constantly like do the finger guns. And it's the same thing, right? When you have a controller, I don't think that's a good thing to constantly hold down the controller. Like, let's say to shoot, you're using the trigger buttons. I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good to just feel they have to hold down the trigger buttons for an entire round in Cuphead, that is, and same thing here. And I just realized Cuphead. Resource management, the time, which is really just a score. If you aren't at the home base by the time you reach 2,000 points, you have to run back. The other resource management thing, I guess, is the watermelon, because apparently it like gives you 4x score, but I think that's like actually trade-off. You can't shoot straight in an arc, like a more straightforward arc. You have to shoot more with as if you're catapulting the watermelon. So I guess that kind of brings me to the second thing. Weapon choice. Watermelon versus tomato. Now I just remember this game's Splosive Tomatafrow. You're supposed to stick with the tomato. It's in the title. Fun? Has potential. I already said this. I think that it's not too fun to just suddenly be backstabbed, as like in Team Fortress 2, right? The spy just suddenly appears out of nowhere. You're just shooting. You're confronting an enemy. It's like in Team Fortress 2, I think it makes sense. And here, I think it also makes sense. But I also do think that it's not necessarily fun to just have your entire run end that way. Graphics, I'm actually gonna say it's an improvement over the last two games. More properly sculpted. Ease of use. I don't know why do I have ease of use next to graphics? Incredibly easy to play and grasp. Appearance. Yeah, no, I don't recognize the word because I'm misspelling the word appearance. Appearance is it makes sense, right? Of course, urban environment equals law enforcement. Yeah, of course. Enforcement. Soundtrack. Only one song that loops probably every 3 minutes. I think normally this would be okay, but this game actually took me a while to get through. It took me like 20 minutes. I don't like that. Oh, sound design. I don't remember hearing the explosions, or I know I also just misspelled explosions, but that's okay because that is the spirit of the game. Explosives, and that's probably on purpose. And I know I just used probably back to back there. That's probably on purpose because you would be blasting your ears with tomato explosives. Story and writing, yeah, it's a creative way of encouraging the player to gather points for what appears to be an I'll say absurd premise. Maybe surreal. I'm not good enough with literary terms to know if it's absurd or surreal. It's one of those. Light fantasy, perhaps. Is it repetitive? Yeah. And I think it's pretty obvious why. If you are like me, you're not the top gamer. And to start over as much as this game kind of how do I say, like, has the way the game is designed, it does have these gotcha moments, in my opinion, which you may disagree, right? Maybe they're not really gotcha moments. It's just me being bad. But I also do think that enemies coming out of nowhere, not out of nowhere, but enemies that you can't quite see, and you turn around and they're right in front of you, and you still have the other enemies that you were just facing to handle, I think that does lend itself to an eventual repetition because you constantly have to restart. Not constantly. You have to restart quite a multitude of times, probably around 5 times. So it's repetitive because the one, I'll say the 1 HP, the 1 HP system and the sneaky enemies will cause you to restart multiple times to achieve the end game. So where does it stand in the wider scheme of all things gamer? I think it doesn't really do anything new. If anything, this is a prototype for the game Cuphead. Pretty much, right? This is like Cuphead, but you're starting the idea. The idea is like brewing. Where does it stand amongst the work of the developer? It's an improvement in terms of balance and artistic direction. When I say balance, because I think there were some problems with dodging, let's say the tractors and the snowballs and Roadkill Bonanza 3. And I think in the second game, right, the cars were so fast, they were dodging your bullets, even though you were spamming the one spot of the road. I think here, in a similar idea, it feels like the spam has been fixed and the dodging has been mostly fixed, right? Well, it's been 99% fixed. The 1% is when you're like me and you try to jump over cars. Right, the game doesn't want you to jump over cars. It wants you to blow them up with tomatoes, logically. And I think it is incredibly sad for me to say, but I really did wish I could have seen the end credits, because what I was doing by the end credits is I wanted to make sure I got to that I was still in action, but to still go to the Safeway, which is the home base. Let me put that there, Safeway, and I just happened to click. I think, like the other games, it should have been escape that took you out of the credits. It should not have been like the arrow keys or Z, because I didn't push Z, or maybe I held it down, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't pushing Z. Yeah, I think that's kind of a fatal flaw, like ignoring the other, problems, which are probably just coming down to me and my skills, my lack of having skill. But ultimately, I do think being rewarded and then you don't get to see the reward because you accidentally pushed a button feels bad. And maybe that's a limitation of Game Maker. I'm not sure. Because it seemed like in the past games, you pushed escape and it would take you out. That's how you officially got out. But here, I pushed the arrow key. I'm pretty sure I pushed the right arrow key and it took me out. If there was a way to fix that, that would probably, I know this game's like from 2011. Speaking in 2023 right now. So what I'm saying is pointless, effectively. This game is never being updated. But that'd be like the lesson I would definitely take away or try to implement as an update or a patch. So, unfortunately, I don't have like an end card for this because it disappeared. But nonetheless, I think that is it for... What was this? Oh, Splosive Tomatafrow. Yeah, I think that's it for that one. GG's. Good games.